going back to Notes, if people have fun on Notes and enjoy Notes and find things relevant to them on Notes, they will keep using it every day and they will find new writers to enjoy. 2 years ago, I would have started the conversation with recommendations and I would have said, recommend other publications and have them recommend you back. But today I start the conversation with Notes and with the app.
It's on everybody's lips right now, Substack Notes. It's basically a social media feed inside Substack, kind of like X, but with a much stronger focus on writing, connecting, and finding your tribe. But if you're new, I get it. It can feel overwhelming. Where do I even start? What's a restack? What should I post? How does the algorithm work? Can I share links outside of Substack, or will I get penalized like on other platforms? And seriously, how do I actually find my people? And then there are those Notes boost challenges and sprints. Are they worth it and legit? Well, today I've got an insider to spill the tea. Linda Lebrun from Substack's Writer Partnerships team talks to writers every single day and actually knows. And if someone asks her how to succeed on Substack, she has one simple tip: get on Substack Notes. So if you're just starting out, let's break it all down, make this platform work for you, and get you set up for success. So I'm super excited to have Linda here. Linda is from Substack, and Linda is part of the Writer Partnerships team at Substack. If you've spent any time on Notes, you've probably seen her name pop up. If I were a new writer thinking about getting on Substack, how would you describe Substack Notes and what makes you so passionate about it?
When people are thinking about getting started on Substack, the way they frame the question is usually, how can I get the most out of being on Substack? They understand that if they had their own blog, then they don't have the benefit of discovery. Or if they were on social media like X or Facebook, they don't get the benefit of ownership. But what they're wanting to know is, okay, if you tell me that Substack is so great at helping with discovery, how can I leverage that? Like, what ought I to do? And usually these days, so 2 years ago, I would have started the conversation with recommendations and I would have said, recommend other publications and have them recommend you back. But today I start the conversation with Notes and with the app. So the way often that I begin to explain it, if people are completely naive of Substack, if I say, have you downloaded the Substack app or do you subscribe to any Substacks? And they say, not really. I usually start by explaining that Substack is a platform where you can have your own publication. You have complete control over everything. You can publish text and audio and video. So that's the basics. But then when I'm explaining about Notes, I say, well, when you download the Substack app, we have a surface that has short form posts like Twitter/X. It's our version of that. And it's our way of giving people discovery within Substack. Because in the early days of Substack, and a lot of people who watch this have been there in the early days of Substack, publications were much more siloed off, and the instruction to get new subscribers was much more like, well, go out to LinkedIn and go out to other places and try to funnel them into your Substack, which people were not satisfied with. So the Notes was our effort to say, if there is a community here now of critical size of people who care about engaging with whether it's written content, whether they want to just read, or whether they want to subscribe to a podcast, or whether they want to watch a video, they are interested to find new sorts of things that fit in with what they're already reading. So the idea of Notes was to say that's a way that Substack can serve that up to those people without interfering on the publication surface, because you as the Substack writer 100% own that. We don't put anything there. So I usually try to explain that they usually have a concept of, okay, I'm making my own Substack post, but then what? And often if I'm on a call, I will share my screen and I'll say, this is what Notes looks like. And right away, they kind of get it, right? Everybody's familiar with what a social media feed looks like, that I can scroll, it's people that I follow. It might be if I follow somebody and they restack something else, I see it. So they start to get an idea that it's this grid carrying out of things that they might be interested in. But then I usually also always point out, you'll notice there's no advertising. And really the last thing I would say about it is what the incentives are. I say that if if I, Linda, subscribe to 3 finance and investing related Substacks, and I download the Substack app and I'm using Notes, I'm looking at the things that I read, I'm browsing in it, Substack ought to know to show me other finance and investing content and say, here's something that you might be interested in. And then that person gets a new reader and they might get a new subscriber. They might get a new paying subscriber. So the incentive always with Substack is we're not trying to take your attention and direct it over here to a commercial, we're trying to take attention and say, hey, let's show this reader other things that they care about, other things they're interested in. And then you as the writer, the best thing is that if you get a new person signing up and a new person relating to your work. So that was kind of a wordy description. Often it's better to, most of the people who are watching this or who are listening will know what that notes surface looks like. If anybody doesn't, it's going to be self-explanatory. Download the Substack app, and the minute you start scrolling, you say, oh, okay, I get what this is. What's kind of underneath is what makes it different, which is what our motivations are. Our motivations are for it to be a discovery surface for writers.
Substack Notes is all about connecting. And there's no better place to start than inside the Online Writing Club with the Notes Club. It's an online writing community where over 11,000 writers are already sharing tips, testing strategies, and most importantly, having fun building relationships. So why go it all alone? Join us today, get started, and also grab the free Get Started on Notes guide, link in the show notes. And Linda, can you share how many people at the moment actively use Notes?
I do not know the answer to that question. There are people within Substack who would have that off the top of their heads, because their goals in life, their goals of their career are related to not just getting more people to use Notes, but getting more people to use it every day and interact with it a lot. So the goals, what can I tell you about that? What I could say is, I mean, you would even have noticed, Christina, like you and I have been on Notes from the very beginning. And when you would go on Notes when we first launched it, when you would go on the app like 18 months ago, you could say some brilliant thing, nothing would really happen. It would be like, I'm posting to the void. And now it is, you will see somebody big like Adam Grant will post a note and it'll have, 5,000 likes, which again, for other social media, it's like 5,000 likes, who cares? The reason we're saying this and the reason that it's worth caring about is because those are people who then would subscribe to his publication. So I don't think we have said anything. It's so nascent, truly. It really is, to use an American metaphor, in the second inning. It's at the beginning of it. So we haven't said anything akin to what we have said, for example, about paid subscriptions on Substack. We said we just surpassed 4 million paid subscriptions to all Substacks. That's always the number of people are, if there are 4 million paid subscriptions, maybe I can sell somebody a paid subscription. So we haven't said anything about the numbers on Notes just yet, but you tell me, what do you think about the vibe of how many people are using it?
Yeah, I remember I interviewed last spring Sarah Fay, and she told me 17,000 people would be on Notes, something like this. And now with 50,000 people, earning money on Substack, and all the people I'm seeing, joining, I think now Substack is mainstream. I shared the Substack report yesterday where I shared like everything I know about Substack based like on all the articles I read and everything you shared via email and via your posts and so on. So I think, yeah, it's like mainstream now. More and more people are joining from Medium and LinkedIn and the Gram and YouTube and so on. So yeah, so this is a really, really cool thing. And if you're thinking about 50,000 publishers, then there are not only publishers, there are of course also the readers. This is very important, I think, for everyone watching or listening to this right now. And everything you covered, is about network effects, which I really love about Substack. So you can get discovered and find your tribe through organic interaction. Could you explain this model of the network effect? Because this is so strong, I think, with Substack Notes.
Yeah, and I think that is the exact right thing to hone in on, because at Substack, we talk about network effects as the thing that we are trying to do that, again, makes it different than just a blogging platform. There are lots of places you could go on the internet and send emails or do a blog. That is not, innovative. But what we're trying to innovate with is to say, how can we make it so that people see Substack as just a destination, or if they come into the Substack world through subscribing to someone, then maybe they can be part of this broader community. Using the word community very loosely, people can participate as much as they want. If somebody wants to, just read one Substack and that's all they do, that's great. But we of course, would love it if they come in and say, as I've talked to, now that I've been at Substack for 4 years, most of what I do is talking to creators, writers, analysts who publish finance, business, and investing content. At the beginning, it was maybe if they had heard of Substack, it was maybe they subscribed to a politics publisher. But now it's more like, a lot of the reading I do is, going to your point about mainstream. A lot of the reading I do about the topics that I care about is on Substack. Like, they find themselves on Substack more because it becomes more of again, that's just the nature of a non-gate kept independent place for people to gather. So going back to your question about network effects and with the practical side of how you leverage that, I think it really is. It's like in your career when everybody says, "Oh, you got to network, you got to know," and you're sort of like, well,
Mm,
what the heck is that? What does that mean? Do I have to go to some weird event and introduce myself to people that I don't
mm.
know? And it really isn't. It's that, well, the people who you worked with in your last job, you stay in touch with them, and you make sure to make friends with the people that you work with, and maybe you go to an industry thing and talk to people at that. What's the Substack version of that? Well, if whatever topic, let's say you write about bird watching, there are probably, if you search, a couple of other people on Substack who also write about bird watching. Maybe some of their content might be interesting to you. And if you follow them and engage with them and reply to them in an authentic way and recommend them, the next thing you know, you will just have made this community of bird watching. Even as I'm saying it, I'm not a bird watcher, and even as I'm saying it, I bet there are people who cover bird watching on Substack, and that they know each other and are aware of each other, maybe compete with each other. This is how communities get made on the internet. And nothing I said is exactly groundbreaking. It really is. It's a very organic way. It's hard for Substack ourselves to do that, right? If we had a category called bird watching, sometimes people feel like, well, why doesn't Substack just make a bird watching
Mm.
category and then there would be a list? Lists aren't really the way people find new stuff to care about and read. The way that they do is because they read this bird watching guy and he says, hey, we just had this great new post about the golden crested tit or whatever. And then people will say, oh, I discovered this new bird watching guy. And then they tell a friend. So think organic and think about going into whatever you care about and like. Find other stuff, find it by scrolling notes and find other stuff and go to communicate with people. Don't view it as just a broadcast. Again, even as I say all this, it's the same advice anybody would ever be given. Giving advice about how to leverage Facebook 12 years ago, it probably was the exact same sort of thing. The problem is on places like Facebook and X, the priority of the platform is always to serve an advertiser. On Substack, our priority literally is to serve everything I just said, because when people make communities, that's what makes them care about each other enough to want to support each other financially.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing there really is if you find another writer, for instance, and you connect, you have these two people coming together and they have their own networks. And then the moment you connect and maybe collaborate, comment, and so on,
That's
so on, you restack, share, post, then you also, can leverage on the audience of the other person. This is the cool thing about the network effect. And so more and more people gonna see you. However, you talk about search. I know many people are frustrated somehow about search. They would love search to be better. What can you share about the state of search on Substack Notes?
Search needs to get better. Search has gotten better, I will say. I remember at the beginning of Notes, and I would go and I'd try to, look for somebody or look for a topic, and all this unrelated stuff would come up, and we would be discussing it internally at Substack. And this is how, I never worked in tech before Substack. This is how as a non-tech person, you learn about what is tough problems to solve and what are easy problems to solve. Sometimes the things that I think would be really tough, they just, throw them up in an afternoon. But search is not as easy as people think. So we are going bit by bit to make search better. I completely appreciate when people post and say, look, if search were better on Notes, people would use it more. They'd be able to find more stuff. So that is one of the things I think where we are advancing. So when it comes to finding, I would say, using organic means to find your tribe and find people that you want to interact with, I think is a good way too. If you subscribe to a few, again, they will recommend others. Recommendations is still really powerful as a way to find overlapping communities. I just saw here's a good example. I have to open Notes to find it. I just saw somebody make a note, and it struck me, and I restacked it because she said that she had received a lot of, it was not somebody who, I'm talking about, bird watching as a community, but sometimes it's not necessarily the person that is in your vertical who is going to help you or do something useful for you by recommending you. Will I find it here? It is, bear with me. So here it is. I'd like to send a huge shout out and thank you to Biblical Man for recommending my pub, Unstack Substack,
Yeah.
right? Some time
Christy
ago.
Keller.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw this today from
He's
Christy.
my top
Yeah.
recommender, and he's generated 754 subscribers. That's almost 20% of my entire subscriber list. So this is not two people who write about the exact same thing. I'm familiar with both of these writers, and they're very contrasting, but they are helping each other because they read each other. They like each other. Sometimes I will, with the finance and investing writers where they might have some overlapping of topic, sometimes I encourage them because they're not, people don't identify as marketers or salespeople. They say, I know how to write. I know how to do the work. I don't know how to market myself. And I say, you should not feel that you cannot reach out and say to somebody. You could send somebody a DM and say, if it's authentic, hey, I read this post of yours. I really liked it. Here's a salient comment about it. I have a Substack too. Obviously, the first time you reach out is not going to be transactional and like, I recommended you. Where's my recommendation back? But this is just like interacting in real life. Like the first time you and I chatted, it wasn't, me telling you to put your podcast on Substack and you asking me to do a podcast with you. But like we got to that, right? So it's like you kind of over time, I think it's like the process of making friends. And we try to at Substack. Why did we introduce DMs? Because we want to make other paths for writers to collaborate. So you touch it on collaboration, and I think that's a huge one.
In fact, Linda, the funny thing here is this really happened, So you shared a note and you said, everyone who'd like to interview me, I'm here, happy to connect. And then I asked you and you said, well, Christina, I see that your videos, interviews are on YouTube. Wouldn't it be better to be like native on Substack? And that's why you encouraged me last summer to start my Substack native podcast, So this was like the beginning of our relationship.
Right.
Then last year in January, I already reached out to Christina and she was pretty busy, and we were like writing back and forth and, now we're here.
Yes, we made it.
However, when I'm hearing like everything with collaborating and all these awesome things, and I also think that search is becoming better and better. So for instance, for one of the back ends of my tribe members, I saw, for instance, horse breeding, or we were looking for fishing. Also I'm a marketing and brand manager. So when I'm looking for marketing in the search, I find now other marketers, or I find other horse breeders or people interested in fishing, which I think is amazing. So search is definitely getting better and better. And you also always say about notes and everything, we are flying the plane. We were, what do you say?
I think it's
we are building the plane while we're flying.
Yes.
Something like that.
Which is, again, I picked that up from my Silicon Valley tech colleagues, because this is a what you do with a startup, right? If you work at a big company, then maybe you can say, oh, we'll spend 6 months building something and then we'll do beta testing and then we'll roll it out. On Substack, as anybody who has used the product a lot knows, we build it. We definitely make it as robust as we can. And there's a lot of thoughtfulness that goes into it, but we're trying to move quickly and iterate quickly and solve the problem quickly so that we can just make a better Substack for everybody who uses it, which we do have a motivation to move. But then sometimes the experience people have is like, wow, this is really not a fully fleshed out thing yet. No, it isn't. It's 100 employees. So it's not, but we are. And the benefit of doing it that way too is that you don't go down a far path of 6 months of building the wrong thing and making mistakes. What you can do is create something and then see what the users do and then let them guide you. So that's, I'm kind of like validating what you're saying in terms of noticing if something is not working perfectly. We are trying to always, work on the parts of it that are going to be most valuable and just make people have the most fun. If people have fun, and going back to notes, if people have fun on notes and enjoy notes and find things relevant to them on notes, they will keep using it every day and they will find new writers to enjoy.
Yeah, and there is an algorithm on notes. And yeah, similar to this, like building the plane while flying it. What can you share about how it works right now, the Substack algorithm? Is there anything you can share with us?
I think that it's essentially, there's nothing magical about it. The motivation of it is really, it reflects on everything I said about the bird watching stuff. It is, if you follow people who talk about a certain topic, then we should be able to use machine learning and coding to be able to say, is this post about that topic that Linda or Christina cares about? And then show it to you. So it's really, if we do our job right, the whole thing operates in the background. If you go back to the beginning of Twitter, the hashtag was explosively useful because the kind of algorithmic sorting that we're talking about was not technically possible. People had to do it themselves. So they had to put hashtag birdwatching. I'm saying on the birdwatching analogy for the entire call, apparently. So they had to do it themselves. This is why you don't see people use, not on X or other services, you don't have to use do not use hashtags on notes. You don't have to, because we are trying to read and analyze and say, what is this about? What is going on with this post? And then show people what they find interesting. Now, what I will say is there's no sort of sense of what people ought to read or what's inherently good when you start to do that. So you have effects like somebody will post, I'll give an example that people will relate to. So sometimes, so I have a Substack, and sometimes what people will do is post a screen cap of their audience growth. And I could post something like a screen cap on my audience growth and say, wow, my audience grows so much because I was using Notes. And that's the kind of thing that there are a lot of writers on Notes, and they will be interested in that, and they will put likes on it. They'll reply, how did you do this, whatever. But then a lot of people using Notes are readers, or they're writers who are not particularly interested in seeing me do a victory lap, and they'll be like, why is there so much self-referential content? So if you see self-referential content, number one, it's probably just because people are engaging with it. And number two, that is then for us to tweak and say, how do we pull the lever so that maybe, but we don't want to do it unfairly, right? We don't want to say, if something is authentically interesting to people, we don't want to like pull the lever and say, oh, suppress this. Again, that's not very Substacky. So what I would say about, let's go to something practical for writers. What I would say in terms of thinking about the algorithm is, if we were to do our job right, the way that the algorithm works, what is an algorithm? It's just a set of rules. And we would make a set of rules about what people see that would really delight them and engage them and make them want to, when they are standing in line for lunch, Substack is going to be the app they open rather than the 25 other apps on their phone. So if we did that right, then what would your content as a writer, as a video maker, podcaster, what would your content, I'm using the word content, but whatever people relate to, writing, what you produce, what would that have to be in order to delight and interest that reader? So if you do, and you knew I was going to get to this, this is what we always say. We always say, and what you always say too, is if you try to serve the algorithm, it's like, well, let me just, go and scrape a bunch of really scurrilous content or try to create stuff that's going to make people upset. That's not sustainable, and that's not a great experience people will have. But what will be a great experience is if people really do what they do best and cultivate their craft. So I would just go back to saying that the people I observe on Substack that do best are exactly the same that people who do really well in the rest of the content universe. Let's go to Adam Grant. Adam Grant is a great person to look at his notes, because his notes are not structured like sort of an annoying LinkedIn post. They're a little piece of something insightful where you read it and you reflect for a minute. Maybe you disagree, maybe you agree, but it actually is a moment of enjoyment. And so I don't think somebody like that sits and thinks, how can I serve what I seem to be seeing when I scroll Substack. They say, how can I serve myself, and how can I serve the reader? So I haven't really given you any thing like, oh, the algorithm really likes pictures of pets, because there is nothing that's solid around that. It is being tweaked all the time. It's being improved all the time. And it's having the tender loving care of some of the smartest engineers at Substack, all to the end of making it as functional and as useful and as fun as possible for the reader. So I would say, if you come away from it with one thing, it would be serve the reader, and then the algorithm, to the extent that it's going to serve the reader, is going to serve you as the person doing the writing.
Yeah, I know. You're not a fan really of pet stack, people sharing photos of their dogs or cats or pigs, because of course you then get engagement, and then somehow you think you have to repeat it over and over. But then I say, somehow it has to be related to your Substack newsletter as well, because if people come there, if it's about dog and you're a dog behaviorist or so helping people, then it's fine. But it's, sharing these slice of life is of course awesome. I also love that you say we are allowed to share meta posts. So for instance, on Medium doesn't like it if we share meta stories, So I used to be like a reporter on Medium, because Medium is not that transparent. So whenever I found a news in an article or so, TechCrunch, then I reported this on Medium. That's why people love me. And now with Substack, I try to do something similar here. I never saw myself a reporter, but a few weeks back, someone said to me, "Christina, you used to be like the Medium reporter." And so I think this meta thing is interesting. Then pet stack, who do you want to attract with what content, depending on what is your core interest and what is your newsletter all about. And then what I also think is cool with Notes is that you can also link out of the Substack universe. So sometimes I'm linking out to my YouTube videos. Why is this so different? Because every other social platform is penalizing these links because they want you to stay on the platform.
Yeah, because Substack doesn't have advertising. That really is the reason. If somebody wants to share a YouTube video, a link to some work they've done off Substack, a link to an article, people share that all the time. Just there's a whole internet out there beyond Substack, and it's very good and interesting and fascinating, and people should be able to share it. This is how social media used to be. Some people will remember Tumblr, some people remember, sort of MySpace, and before everything was so locked down, it was much more. Actually, let's go back to sort of the era of blogs, when blogs were the main way that people engaged with intellectual and editorial and journalistic content on Substack. It really was, you'd have your set of blogs that I can remember going, I'll check out Gawker today, and I'll check out Jezebel, and you check out various sites. And there's lots of good stuff out there. Then in the social media era, because the way the social media giants make their money, it's no secret, they make it by advertising. They want to keep you in the loving arms of just staying on, for example, LinkedIn. And I've talked to writers a lot, because a lot of business and finance and investing writers use LinkedIn. It's kind of it's for a lot of people, it's the only social media they use if they're professionals. And I've talked to them about how well is the performance of you putting your Substack links on LinkedIn. It's okay, but it's not as good as you would expect, because of just what you said. They use their algorithm as a big red button to say, the minute somebody is going to have a risk of somebody leaving the platform, we have got to downrank that. Substack just does not feel that way, because we don't have the, and you could say, well, don't you want to keep people in the app? Don't you want to keep people just reading Substacks? I think the mentality of the founders, and Substack is very founder-led, and I think that the founders really come from principle, is that's not a game we want to play, because if you're trying to have intellectual content, and again, editorial, journalistic, instructional, and you start to just like rope people in and say, this is going to be a walled garden and you can't leave, that's not what our algorithm is going to be based on. If you post a LinkedIn link and I am interested in branding and marketing, why shouldn't that come up in my feed? So anyway, that's just a long way of saying, and I'm glad you brought it up, because for a lot of people, they have the frustration. I've experienced this. I've experienced posting a link out on a social media site, and then it's like, okay, apparently nobody clicked it, nobody cares. And it's because the platform is serving itself, which it's allowed to do. But in Substack's case, we don't have that sort of, the algorithm will not be built in where we're going to try to stop people from linking out. So again, it's a way that to make it practical for the writer can add value for their audience, because maybe you come across something that's just, a very insightful thing to read today, but it's not on Substack, go ahead and share it.
Yeah, I love this. So a great example is, for instance, X. If you try to share your newsletter, a newsletter post on X, then you can't see the embed anymore, because they're like penalizing if you're now linking to Substack. Mm-hmm. A question with notes often is, Christina, how often should I post? So there is one tribe member, his name is Fintropy, and he found out that bestsellers, for instance, with 10,000 subscribers, have an average monthly note count of 30 and over. So some even post 56 or more than 60 posts on notes. Is posting daily like a sweet spot to be seen, or is there anything else you can share about how often people should be active on notes? Busy people. Part-time writers.
Yes, it's a great question. I don't have any data that says either that magic happens if you post 30 times a day, or that not posting it at all will hurt you. I can tell you for sure that there are people on Substack who the only time their stuff comes up in notes Substack ourselves inserts some posts into notes. So if I'm scrolling, I might see, even if the person didn't choose to post on notes, I might see their stuff. So there are some people who don't do it at all. So it's, what I would say is, the people who have come and as doing it part-time and really trying to, they're not bringing some big, their CNBC audience or whatever over from Substack. The typical Substack person is not like that. It's somebody who's trying to build. And I think that they have success if they engage in an authentic way regularly. And I really feel it's kind of oppressive to say to people, make sure you post 3 times a day, unless they are bought into that and they want the motivation of that. For me to say, oh, make sure you post a lot, is not really recognizing that people have different lifestyles, different metabolism for how much or how often they want to say things like that. So you can hear that I'm kind of evading the question, only because I think that people need to figure out what fits them and suits them and have fun. I think having fun is a huge thing. Like, you've seen me, I go through phases where I'm posting multiple times on notes a day. Then for the last 2 months, there was a lot going on at work and I was hardly on notes at all, which is okay. Then you come back. Similarly, for people who that maybe I would pitch to the writers listening to this, maybe go through a little experiment and say, I'm going to do an experiment and I'll post on Notes a couple times a day. And if I really don't have anything to say and don't feel like it, I won't. Or here is one. There is a writer on Substack named By Burke, and he has both a Substack and a blog off Substack.
Burke.
Burke.
He's also from Germany. Yeah.
Yeah, who's also from Germany.
He's also Burkhardt. Yeah, he's also a writer from Medium. Yeah.
Okay, yes. See, it's a lot of Medium writers came, and it was kind of like they brought all of the hard-earned, hard-won knowledge about audience cultivation from their Medium experience, and now a lot of them are on Substack, and I have learned a lot from you guys, to be honest. Burke says to, make a goal. He wrote a post about Notes a long time ago, and that's influenced me because he was talking about what his practical experiences of using it and how it was helpful. And he said, what he said that I thought was gold was work on, if you're on the smaller side, work on replying to people rather than making top level notes and saying, oh, I hope the algorithm picks me today. You find somebody and their notes are neat to you, you can reply. Like I swear, like some of the most fun I've had on Notes is just replying to someone with like a crying laughing face, and then we might end up following each other, we might not, it doesn't have to. But I think that if people are watching this and thinking like, oh God, I don't have all that time and I'm not coming up with these witty one-liners every day, if you feel motivated to reply, this is how we make friends and this is how we network on Notes. Try replying.
You mentioned such a great thing with restacking. Restacking allows publishers and readers to reshare posts, notes, and comments with their subscribers and followers in Notes. However, I know that many people are afraid to restack. So what do you think is like the biggest misconception about how restacking works? Because if I restack, for instance, someone who's interested in bird watching and he, posted something about bird watching, then somehow this won't help me, or the question, what's in it for me, or the question, what's going to happen then? What will others think about me if it's maybe also something more vulnerable or so? What do you think about restacking? Because some are at the moment like recommending this. So restack as much as you can, so that the algorithm sees you're like engaging and everything. And I love to, as you shared, similar to Burkhardt, I love to restack posts that only get a few likes from the tribe. So they see, hey, with your help, I now from, 2 likes or so, I now getting like 20 likes or something like this. So to encourage them so that they have the confidence to keep sharing their posts, because many, as you know, quit in week 14 or 16. Am I right? Most quit then. And I really want to, motivate them to keep pushing. So what do you think about restacking? What's like the biggest misconception here? What do we need to know?
So I think the misconception is, I think people have been hypnotized by other social media sites where people drill down so deep and they find all these rules that they have to follow. And somebody comes out with, oh, I analyzed the code of X, and if somebody mutes you, that's a downgrade score of something. And then if you restack or retweet too much, that's a downgrade score of it. And there's all these rules, and they think if there's a list of rules I follow, I'll enter the kingdom of heaven, and I will be a big deal on Substack. And I would just say to people, like, throw away all the rules, because whatever, I think people over determine. It's like when you see a face in a cloud. Oh, look at that. But there's really nothing there. It's just a cloud. On Substack, like a lot of the time, it really is just a cloud. When people will make a note and it'll hit, and they'll be like, oh, okay, if that note was a photograph of myself, I'll just post photographs of myself. Don't over determine off what you're observing, because there's probably no face in the cloud. So let's go back to restacking. I restack all the time. Restacking a lot is not going to help you or hinder you in the algorithm, as far as I know. Again, there might be some engineer that as we speak is sitting at a table being like, we got to change it for this, but I couldn't imagine why, because you always just go back to what is Substack trying to do? Substack is trying to make Notes fun, so readers use it every day. Just keep that in your mind, and you'll realize, why would we not want people to restack? Because restacking somebody, it's a little bit of a compliment. If I restack somebody, I'm saying, oh, your stuff is good. I want other people to see it. It's a little bit I'm advocating for you. So why would we not want people to restack? And inversely, why would we, we wouldn't downrank somebody for doing it too much. And I also think like people might think too much. Oh, maybe if, let's say, so whatever content I'm putting, my theme when I do notes is kind of like how to use Substack better. But sometimes I'm restacking something that is, it might be some politics post that's just going viral. I just read it and I think like, oh, this is a good example of somebody using Substack well and doing something different. I don't overly worry about it not fitting my brand, and I wouldn't say that people should overly worry about that either. I also wouldn't say, and I don't think anybody's suggesting this, but to just go and be like, I'm going to spend an hour and all I'm going to do is just restack to kind of influence the algorithm in some way. I mean, spend an hour writing an amazing post, right? Or spend an hour doing what we're doing right now and throwing on, doing a podcast with somebody, going live in the app. I should not fail to recommend that now that we have the ability for people to go live in the app, if anything, I would love to see, we all would love to see writers experimenting with the going live functionality, which I've tried. It works really well. So rather than thinking about trying to use tricks or games, and I appreciate, people have been trained that the tricks and the games work. They've been trained by every site. They've been trained by LinkedIn, but we are really not trying to play that attention game. We're trying to play more a game of people enjoying it. So yeah, if it moves you to restack, do it. If it moves you to restack something that's off topic for you, do it. I am doing it. People should feel empowered, not fearful. Never feel fearful or never feel that you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. We don't have an interest in, making it so that people can screw up the algorithm for themselves.
Yeah, the funny thing here is then that it is as if I were employed at Substack or so, because last spring I started it was called the Notes Club, dance in the Notes Club and just have fun. This was the idea, because there are so many people out there, telling you do this, not that, something like this. And they said, hey, just, start by introducing yourself, say hi, and then try it one more time. I don't know, share, for instance, a photo of your pet, whatever. But then keep posting and try and experimenting and just have fun, Don't make it like a game or something. This was the idea behind it, because last spring there were many people, as you said, coming from LinkedIn or other platforms, and then they said, this subscribe for subscribe game.
Oh yeah, we can talk about that. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, or follow for follow, and I was like, what? This is this doesn't work long term with subscribers. One thing I really love is that we can now see the chat thread in our notes feed. What's the idea behind it? Similar to now also seeing someone is live also above at the feed. So could you share a bit more about this?
Yeah, I think the reason we're doing that is just to say, look, this is happening. Look, people are doing chats. Look, this might again be something that you want to click into and be part of it. Look, this is a feature that maybe you can use for yourself. So we're trying to highlight all the different pieces and parts of Substack in the feed, because if the feed is supposed to be one place where you go, both to participate with the publications to which you've subscribed and to discover new publications you might be interested in, we should have everything. We should have all that. We should have the lives coming up, and we will do more on this. Like right now, with going live is so new. Some people might be watching this and they might not even know that we have this. You can, if you have downloaded the Substack app, hit live and go live to your audience. You can choose what audience you go live to. It can be to everybody, it can be to your subscribers, or it can be only to your paying subscribers. You can go live with up to 3 people. So we want, if somebody is scrolling and Aaron Parnas, who's somebody who I'm a fan of, and he goes live, I want to get a notification, know that it happens. And the other thing about going live is after you finish your live, a recording of the whole thing, it is provided to you, and then for people who couldn't tune in, you can make a Substack post about it. So you can see what we are trying to do here. We are trying to make it easier for people to do more content in more ways. And then what's our job? Our job is to try to surface it and make it so that people find it. So you can expect to see lots of that. And still, we'll tweak the way we do it. We want it to be the most functional and the most sensible and the just legible in terms of people understanding why we show the stuff we show.
Yeah, I was super excited the first time I went live, a few weeks ago. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
but then this was And then it was so awesome because, as you said, it was really fun because some of the tribe members joined and had some questions, and suddenly we started talking about a specific topic. Although it was just like me going live for the first time and experimenting a bit, and suddenly we had a topic we were discussing. This was really, really interesting. Self-publishing, for instance, and also I had a course, and then I said, "Do you dare to go live with me?" And then during the course we went live. This was also amazing. And what I love is you say more content, but I think it's more this work smarter, not harder. So you have then the recording, you can send this, and most are watching the recording then, of course. And then also you can generate these clips and then share them again on notes. So this is what I love about repurposing. So when people ask me, Christina, how can you be so prolific? It's all about repurposing stuff, making short form content. This was something that I've done like right from the start. So when I couldn't write a long form post on Medium, for instance, then I wrote just a 150 word story or so on the platform. And then if people want to be like strategic about notes, now you added also the analytics for notes posts. Many ask, can I also filter for my best performing notes somewhere? Can I somewhere find this too?
That is a great feature request. I do not think that you can do that yet, but that is something that I think that we want to empower people to be able to do. And again, not to make people overdetermined. Yeah. I worry that if I could filter for my best notes, on the internet, everything always forms a power law distribution where you have one of them would have 10 times as many likes as my average. And then I would have on average, and then I would have a long tail of ones that didn't get that much engagement. So I would be prone to look at that and say the one that did the most and say, I'm just going to do that over and over, and then you have audience capture, and then you're not having fun anymore. But that said, Substack still does have the mentality of just give people the analytics and let them have insights into it. So I will take that idea back to people. But I want to touch on what you said about the sort of subscribe for subscribe and follower for follower, which we don't see anymore now, but there was sort of a phase of it. And just to echo that it's not really useful or functional. I think people, and this happens on every platform. I noticed on TikTok a while ago, there was a trend called teamwork, where you would post teamwork in a comment section and everybody would follow each other. And there would be some idea that it would positively influence the algorithm and it's going to show you more. Maybe that is what happens on TikTok, but that is not what happens on Substack. All that's going to happen is you're going to get a whole lot of people who don't really authentically care about what you're doing, and maybe makes the numbers look good. But what are we trying to do here? We're trying to get people to read us and care about us, not just to have X number of subscribers signed up. So I think that when in doubt, look at what high performing writers and publishers on Substack do. I've given the example of Adam Grant a few times. Somebody within the finance category is Doomberg, doomberg.substack.com. I give them as an example a lot because I think they do so many things right. They use notes. And if you go and look at their notes are not programmed against any set of rules that they're following. It's just what their audience will like. Sometimes it's very insidery, where other people might not really know what they're talking about if it's something about the economy, but they will do it. They'll post like a screen cap of something interesting and their comment on it. Very, very organic, and definitely not doing any kind of subscribe for a subscriber or follow for follower. I feel for people, because when you're at the very beginning, I know to get that snowball rolling down the hill at the start is hard. Like to get people listening to this who are still working on their first 100 subscribers, it is a lot. I know it is a lot, but then, and this is what you encourage people, to keep going, to be consistent. If you can get to, your third month of posting and writing regularly on Substack, you just blew past so many competitors.
Still not sure where to begin? I've got you covered. Download the free Get Started on Notes guide, link in the show notes. Yeah. And Linda, what do you think about these note boosts? We have many notes boosts, yes, we see, or we have also these note sprints. I think the note sprints are totally fine because this just keeps people in the momentum. But what do you think about the boosts? Boost meaning that many people are now, me included, like I started last week, I think, with notes boost, where I just said, hey, drop your link to your latest post in the chat, a post you were proud of, and let's check it out. And it's very interesting then reading all these stories. This is what I do. And then I restack, for instance, or I leave a comment, something like this, if I find the time to engage. Mm-hmm. What do you think about this? Because this is, of course, a trend right now. Some also told me when they were engaging in these, let's call it like groups, that they had the feeling this was artificial somehow, because because,
Yeah.
you're just restacking without reading it. And then it's, again, something like as on Medium in the past where there were Facebook groups,
Yes,
people
for
were
sure.
meeting them and just, without reading, just liking it because this was the time when you got paid for likes. And then that's it. And what do you think about it? Is this like for you artificial engagement, or is this something that Substack also encourages?
I mean, you can probably totally guess what I'm about to say. Like every platform will have people who become friends and help each other and promote each other's content. And every platform will probably have people who say there's a set of rules that I can inorganically do and something, magic is going to happen or I'm going to get some advantage. I think to the extent that if people are friends together and they read each other's work, I'm like forever. I just had yesterday, if people look at my notes, a buddy of mine here in Toronto just started a Substack. Of course, I'm going to restack what he put. That's not coordinated or manipulation. I thought it was a good post. I liked it, and he's my friend. But if people have like a big group where you have 20 people and all they're doing is restacking without any regard to thematic similarity or whether it's good, I don't think it's really going to do that much. Let's go back to what Substack has based our algorithm on. It's wanting people to have fun and have a good experience in the app, and that's if that's what's going to govern what people see more specifically. So I guess I would encourage people to have fun when there are trends like this. This again, I'm not going to say like don't coordinate together, because I know there used to be Twitter DMs where people would, big accounts would all retweet each other. Like this, you mentioned the Medium version of this. There's always going to be versions of this. I think where people go wrong is if they spend too much of their precious, finite energy and time focusing on that and don't focus on make your writing really good, figure out what's really special about what you can do, what's different, maybe do an extra post in the week, just the very classic stuff that anybody could guess. I mean, ChatGPT could come up with the advice I'm coming up with right now: post more and post better. It's so obvious, right? But I would say people should just make sure to focus on that. So I'll tell you, like, there's not people within Substack aren't sitting around like, oh no, people are coordinating to restack each other. Like it's not a big deal if people wish to do that. I know that some people on Notes will be like, oh well, this is sort of inorganic or inauthentic. I think what will shake out in the end, if we do our jobs right, is people will see things that they really care about and like. And if the writers do their jobs, they will be able to, if we help as we can with helping audiences find them, then that will be how they attract readership as opposed to anything inorganic. So I hope that's kind of a balanced answer. I don't want to give an answer like, no, don't do that, because I think there can be a lot, oh my gosh, like we talked about community the whole time, and that is a form of community, is a form of people helping each other. And I do, all of us, I think at Substack do a version of that ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. I think if it's about like relationship building, so you're building a relationship with
Yeah,
someone.
precisely.
So, for instance, now with the people also watching this right now, I have a relationship with my subscribers, and that's why I know a lot of things, what's going on in their lives and so on. So we have a relationship. So it's on another level. If it's just about, I don't know anything about you and I'm just, restacking, then it's again this growth hacking, which is not good. But if it's genuine and about relationship building and about helping each other, I think then it's totally fine. There's one more question I get like all the time. It is, what is the difference between followers and subscribers? You introduced now followers on Notes. So many people say, hey, Christina, I'm having 5,000 followers, but I only have 1,000 subscribers. What does this mean? What can you share about followers and subscribers? This idea about like, meeting someone on a date and then marrying this person, And another thing is, if someone, for instance, subscribes to my newsletter, then this person also can subscribe to the whole network of people I'm following. And there's the question, do these followers do these people automatically then see my posts on their notes? So for instance, if you would recommend me and I would be someone you follow, would then this new subscriber also see my posts on Notes?
Mm-hmm. Yes, those are all great questions. So I'll start with, what is the concept of followers? I know we're recording this on Valentine's Day. It always goes into like dating and getting married and all of these sort of sketchy, that sometimes is the analogy that gets made. It kind of is like that. Let me explain it without using that terminology. So however many Substacks anybody listening to this subscribes to, I subscribe to many, I work at Substack, but you probably have a limit. You probably have a limit of how many Substacks you are going to sign up for, whether you get the emails or just read your Substacks in the app. What is it going to be? Is it going to be 5? Is it going to be 7? Is it going to be 20? very few people, not nobody, but very few people want to sign up for 800 Substacks. But maybe you want to have a lot of fun in the Substack app, and maybe you want to see people's notes. You want to see some of what they do and engage with them and reply to them and be in community with them. So the idea of following is that maybe you can follow, 100 or 200 or 800 people, but it is a lightweight way where you're not handing over your email address. You're just indicating some interest in this person. I mean, following it's an old concept. Again, this is not indigenous to Substack. Lots of other social media sites have had some concept of following. So what we are forever trying to do is to bring people down the funnel of interest to engage with you, to hopefully get all the way to being a paid subscriber. So at the top, it is understanding that they might see you and they might like you and be interested in you, but they may not be all the way ready to give their email address, which is, of course, what we would like, what Substack and you as the writer would much prefer. Let's get the email address. But people have a limit on how many Substacks they will sign up for by email. So we say, okay, let's give something that's a little lighter and easier. And then if they follow you and you as the writer do the activities that we've been talking about this whole time, if you're active on Notes, then you can, bring them in, they're reading your stuff, and eventually they subscribe. And then if they subscribe, they may want to, if you have paid turned on, participate with you fully and pay. So just picture this as this sort of like waterfall where you're trying to bring them down. And I know that some people look at this followers and they're sort of like, well, if I have 1,000 subscribers, which is people who've provided their email address, and I have 4,000 followers, which is people who have clicked the follow button or have come in because there's somebody, like you said, when you sign up for a Substack, it says you can sign up for these other ones that this person recommends, and you can sort of join their scene by following the other people they follow. A lot of follows come in that way. So I have these 4,000 people who have followed me, but I don't get their email address, and that stinks. I want their email address. Well, so we have done it so that it benefits the reader because it's a more lightweight way to engage, but then eventually they may give their email address. So it's, again, I say this with empathy. I know that people's perception is it was a change to Substack when we introduced this, but our data shows that it has been beneficial for people and to have new audiences finding them. So you always, and I should underline, because this is important to the ethos of Substack, you still can always export anybody who has given you their email address. The followers, of course, they chose to follow you on Notes, so they're going to stay in Notes. That is the place that you engage with them, but their subscribers is kind of a separate, different category that you fully own. So yeah, and I don't mind kind of going into detail about that, because I know that we have as Substack endeavored to explain how this works, but it was a change, it was a difference in how Substack works. But what we have seen so far, and we could tweak how it works. If somebody is watching this in 2026, Google, because it might not work exactly that way. Our whole motivation is to get people to sign up and get people to really just increase over time how much they engage with you, but give them an easy way to get started. So that's the entire idea of following.
Yeah, cool. So now I think everyone gets it. What's the difference? And in April, Linda, Notes turns 2, so a full-on toddler,
Amazing.
I'd say.
Wow.
What have you learned from watching it grow?
I think my own biggest takeaway, first of all, I will say it's just very impressive in terms of how people who are Substack users have embraced not just Notes, but every time we introduce something new to it, like the ability to upload video, they are the Substack base of publishers is experimental. And they have a mentality similar to yourself, where it's like, let's try some different things and see what works. So I've been impressed by how much people have experimented with it. And I also think that's, I hadn't thought about that, the fact that it's the 2-year anniversary, but I also think that there's been kind of waves of influxes of people, sometimes based on events that are external to Substack, like TikTok being threatened to be banned, and I guess TikTok was taken down for a brief period of time. Like, you wouldn't think that's not necessarily a natural overlap of audiences for original Substack, but now that we have so much video, Substack has become a more attractive place for that kind of person, especially once they realize that they can actually have direct contact and ownership of their audience, which is really attractive to them. So I think that, we will keep going with it. We'll keep focusing on it. There is a lot of energy within Substack to make it better for people and to listen to the feedback that people are giving. Like, I think people would be surprised if then when they post on Notes, I wish we had this feature, or I don't like how that works. That makes its way to the meeting rooms at Substack, and it's taken really seriously, because we're not going to go anywhere unless people have a good time on it. So yeah, it'll be interesting with the 2-year anniversary, and taking stock and seeing how we do, because we have goals that are quite ambitious for it as well.
Okay. Yeah, and I also read the WeFunder announcement from December 2024, where the Substack founder said, we see a clear path to 40 million paid subscribers. So you mentioned this earlier. Now we have 4 million paid subscribers. Substack started in 2017. Now we have 2025, from 0 to 4 million paid subscribers. I think this is huge. So for instance, the New York Times, I remember the story, are we past peak newsletters, for instance? I don't think so. I think this is just the early beginning. It all started with Patreon. Now we have Substack, and I love the subscription model. What do you think? What role plays Notes in this idea of that Substack is heading towards these 40 million paid subscribers?
I think Notes has a big role in it, because I think there is look, if you and I go out on the street and start asking people, have you heard of Substack? Lots of people haven't. Like, in the community of writers, for sure they do. If I'm reaching out to a business book author, or you talk to a bunch of journalists at a party, yes, they know it. But there's a lot of people out there who love the internet and love to read or love to watch videos, listen to podcasts, and they don't know the name of Substack, or they don't really know what Substack offers. So I think the next 40 million people that come and use Substack and engage with Substack are still out there. And Substack has never run an advertisement or had a poster on the side of a bus. The only way people come into Substack is the writers and creators on Substack attract audiences and bring audiences. And I think that Notes is such a central part of it, because it is Notes is the first time where somebody can hear the name Substack and say, okay, I'm going to come in, I'm going to download the app. Somebody told me that the Substack app is fun. I read an article and it mentioned Substack. I'm intrigued. And they download it, and that's their way into the Substack universe, as opposed to seeing you on YouTube and coming in that way, or they, see a specific person be interviewed on MSNBC and come into it that way. Here we can say Substack itself is a destination, not because we care about anybody listening to what Substack has to say, but because it can be the megaphone for the writer. So I think that was the whole, I mentioned at the very top of this conversation that if I had been talking to you 2 years ago and we had talked about how can I grow on Substack, I would have spent the first 15 minutes talking about recommendations. That now everybody knows about that. It still works, but it's not the number one engine anymore. Notes and use the app is the number one engine now. So yeah, and I think that's where that's useful potentially for the writers who are listening to this to get some insights, is that I think you ought to feel comfortable that if you invest your time and your attention into Notes, that it'll pay off for you over the next 1, 2, 3 years. Rather than, we are in a contest for the writer's attention just as much as the writers are in a contest for audience attention. If you think about it, any writer, they could choose to, well, maybe I should go on LinkedIn, or maybe I should focus on building my YouTube channel. Or I've had people say to me, should I start a Facebook page to get people to come to my Substack? And I say, no, don't do that. Just focus within the Substack ecosystem. We want to make that the most worthwhile thing for people to spend their marginal hour of marketing investment on.
Yeah, and I think it's all about word of mouth. But the question always is, what do you say about Substack? Because Substack is so many things. We don't say it's a newsletter platform anymore.
No.
What do you say, like in a sentence? What should I, or everybody watching or listening right now, what should we say?
Yeah.
What is Substack?
So I'll tell you, I was in the elevator on the way up to the Substack office in December. And it's on the 7th floor, and somebody who got off at the 6th floor, we were going up, and he goes, what is on the 7th floor? And I was like, it's actually happening. The moment of my elevator pitch of what is Substack. And I said, Substack is an internet platform where people can publish posts and send out emails, and they can do text, video, and podcasts. And he was like, huh. And then he gets out at his floor. And I was like, I should have told him to download the app. Because really, the way to figure out what Substack is what I should start with is it's an app. It's an app, and download the app and you're going to figure out what it is very quickly. But it's, sometimes I will say, if I'm talking to somebody and they're an independent creator, I'll say it's for independent creators of content. If I'm talking to somebody and it's a journalist, I say people use it for editorial and journalistic content. And I talk about the principles of Substack. So but I would say I myself would not use the word newsletter in the elevator pitch anymore. But if people identify with newsletter as a concept, that's awesome too. I mean, it's a big 10.
Cool. Now we know exactly what we should say if we want to recommend Substack. I love this conversation so much, Linda.
Yes, me too, Christina. Thank you.
Go on for hours about so many things. And for the elevator pitch, I would recommend, a business card with the Substack QR code, know, so you can then say, here, just scan it. So thank you so much, Linda. It was delightful.
Thank you.
And I think we see each other on Notes. Am I right?
Yeah, we absolutely will see each other on Notes. Thank you, Christina. Your questions were terrific, so I enjoyed myself.
If you found this helpful, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on more tips, strategies, and insider secrets for growing your Substack. Let's build your audience your way.